Hello, denizens. I'd like to pause the usual dour frivolity of this channel to call out some news I recently received. Dr. Demento, the legendary comedy radio DJ, is retiring after promoting comedy acts for 55 years. If you're old enough to be a comedy fan and actually listened to radio, then you probably know about Dr. Demento. Of course, his most noteworthy achievement was the launching of Weird Al Yankovic's career. But he made many others famous, including the Frantics comedy troupe, of which I was a member. Many of you Americans might never have heard of us or our short-lived Showtime TV series, but an insane number of you remember Taekwon Leap and Last Will and Temperament, which Demento frequently played. Taekwon Leap became better known as the Boot to the Head sketch. Oh, now many of you are going, oh, you're the boot to the head guy. Yes, in fact, it was very funny when I was first invited onto Nerdrotic's Friday Night Tight Show, I think almost 2 years ago, and I brought up boot to the head, and Gary Beckler blurted out, oh my God, you're the boot to the head guy. And that is all thanks to Dr. Demento. We met him when we were on our American promo tour for Four on the Floor, our sketch comedy show on Showtime. And by American promo tour, I mean just Los Angeles, because why bother with anywhere else, right? And as is fitting for an unknown Canadian comedy troupe in the United States of America, on a lower-tier cable channel, we got all the big gigs. We embarrassed ourselves on the Bob Uecker Show.
Welcome to Bob Uecker's Wacky World of Sports, starring Bob Uecker.
All right, back here at the Wacky World of Sports, and my next act has flown in directly from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, to be with us here on the Wacky World. They're wacky, they're nutty, they're the Frantics right here.
We did a gig at the Beverly Hills Hotel on Rodeo Drive, where the lighting guy told us to just give him the cue sheet. He didn't need a rehearsal. This was Los Angeles, after all, not the Toronto backwater we came from, whereby he proceeded to keep the lights off while we were performing the sketches and turn them on during the blackouts between the sketches, essentially the exact opposite of how a sketch comedy show should actually work. If a pin had dropped on the luxurious carpeting, it would have been louder than the reaction to our act. We were opening for a reconstituted version of The Temptations. When we got back to the dressing room that we shared with the boys, they looked at us with knowing pity and shook their heads. Thank God we got the professional Hollywood lighting treatment. And finally, we performed at the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard. And as is the case with these kinds of gigs, the publicist tries to wrangle the highest profile entertainers to come to the gig, to add some Hollywood showbiz zing to the affair, and maybe some reporter will pick up on that. Our zing came in the form of Howie Mandel, Stephen Furst, and Dick Van Patten. I don't know what lister they were at the time, but we appreciated the effort. As far as the performance went, our first bit bombed. I knew it was the wrong bit to open with, but never mind about that. But we recovered by the end. Traditionally, the Frantics were never good at audition situations. Luckily, the highlight was meeting Barrett Hansen, a.k.a. Dr. Demento. I can't remember where he was holed up. I think it might have been the Fox lot. Anyway, He was a huge fan of ours from our records. Taekwon Leap was voted Best Comedy Bit 2 years in a row. His radio show that was syndicated in 1974 was, I'd say, grudgingly broadcast all over America. I say grudgingly because comedy was of little to no interest at the radio station unless there was a local programmer who was a comedy fan, and they did exist. The Demento radio show would often be put on late because, well, mainly because it filled time and was cheap. But fans of comedy and the Doctor didn't care when it was on. Actually, frankly, later the better. It was more fun. He was the only game in town playing mostly novelty songs by Spike Jones, Alan Sherman, and Stan Freberg to new audiences. And it popularized songs such as Dead Puppies by Ogden Edsel and Bill Frenzer, Fish Heads by Barnes and Barnes, and Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer by Elmo and Patsy. Though, I have to admit I could have used fewer replays of Fish Heads. Sorry, Doctor. And he gained a rabid following that dovetailed nicely with the emergence of comic book fans and video game playing. And listeners' request was a big part of his 2-hour show. And in 1979, Yankovic's My Bologna, a parody of My Sharona, for those of you who needed to know, was a consistent top 5 listener request winner. You could say Dr. Demento launched more big chart toppers than The Voice, which I believe numbers at 0. The Frantics appeared on many of Demento's compilation CDs, for which we are grateful. The last one being number 15, featuring a wonderful bit called Just 5 Minutes. I believe we were one of the few acts that Barrett included that were just sketches, not music. For your curiosity, we share this CD with such numbers as The Villain Who Wears No Pants by Logan Whitehurst and the Junior Science Club, Taxidermal Therapy by the Four Bitchin' Babes, and the shockingly current Iranian Uranium by Robert Lund. This CD came out in 2007. The show ended its syndication run in 2010, one of the last vestiges of radio creativity that was slowly killed off by President Clinton's ill-conceived Telecommunications Act of 1996. The act deregulated the telecommunications industry, including radio broadcasting, leading to increased media consolidation and ownership. That worked great. The wretched music landscape we endure now can be directly traced back to Clinton's moronic decision. Luckily, the show started its own streaming service, which continues to this day at drdemento.com. It requires payment, but it's worth it. I never thought that audio-based comedy got much respect, especially after the era of classic radio comedy died, and since the 60s, when pop music really kicked into high gear, no one was going to play a Joan Rivers bit in between Chicago and the Jefferson Airplane, although frankly that doesn't sound like such a bad idea. Comedy did successfully move to sitcoms on TV and stand-ups onto The Tonight Show, and lived for quite a while on vinyl deep into the 80s. But that's done, because it requires an attention span. I'll leave links to our albums in that section, description section below. So in conclusion, comedy owes a debt of gratitude to Dr. Demento. After 55 years of keeping a massive library of classic comedy alive, you deserve to leave on a high note. Thanks, Barrett. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.